Last panel of the con, everybody. All right.
Bringing it home.
I know. Yeah. It feels like there should be like, I would say confetti, but really it should just be booze at this point.
Really? Yes.
Nobody
yes,
wants to clean up the confetti.
No. But I did have my husband get my favorite rosé bubbly cans, because I'm white trash, of wine.
All right.
Tea in a lovely mug.
This is the last panel of the Heroes, the Convention of Heroes 2021. This is the non-DC MCU panel. We are going to be talking about TV, we're going to be talking about movies, and we are going to ignore the two big giants. But of course, now that I've said that, my first question, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves and let me know what your favorite DC or Marvel movie is, so we have a caliber of what we're going for here. All right, Samantha, let's start with you, the bottom corner.
So, hello, I am Samantha Bryant. I write the Menopausal Superhero series for Falstaff Books. And my favorite, Thor Ragnarok, if I want to be really happy, and Logan, if I want to be really moved.
Okay.
Oh, I like that answer. Yeah.
You stole mine.
Yep. Here's the deal. Once someone said it, no one else can use it. New rule.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Watch
Okay,
this.
Matt, let's see if we can back Trish into a corner. What have you got?
Well, I'm Matt King, and some of the books I've written include Prism, Atalanta, and the Circle War series, and you can find those on kingwrites.com. As far as favorites Marvel movies go, I'm going to go with Infinity War and Endgame as one movie. And that sort of runs the gamut. That gets you the happy and the sad throughout.
True.
So covers all your bases. But
right.
Spider-Man Homecoming is very, very close.
Okay. I see
That was
where
a
you're
good
going
one.
with this.
That was a good one.
Trish, what do we got?
I am Trish Heinrich. I write urban fantasy superhero series under T.L. Heinrich, and you can find those at superherofiction.com or my website, which you see with my name. And my first paranormal romance novel, The Celestial Superheroes, is coming out in August, and you can find the pre-order link also on my website. So for Marvel, my favorite, since Samantha stole the one that I really love, the two that are my favorites, but I would say Captain America: The First Avenger. Remy and I have had disagreements about this movie, but I believe it is one of the best superhero films.
The First Avenger.
And The First Avenger, yes. The first Captain America film. And one of the reasons it's the best is because of Peggy Carter's boob grab of Steve when he comes out of the pod. Classic. It's classic. And for DC, I'm going to go old school, and I'm going to go Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve and Mark Ruffalo, because I love that movie.
Okay. So I feel we are now calibrated to Trish's tastes.
Boob grabs and
Boob
Christopher
grab.
Reeve. There we go.
My name is Jeremy Flagg. I write the Children of Notre Dame series. I'm also working on superhero romance, but no one cares about that right now. My favorite, the one I like to pick apart movies. The one that I find really difficult to pick apart is Captain America 2. Because for me, it was the perfect espionage movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like horrible movies because New Mutants actually goes pretty high on my list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll admit it. I liked X3 as well. So, like...
Oh.
At least you're not saying Dark Phoenix, because I don't know if we could be friends after that.
What do you mean? Apocalypse was like the best movie. Okay. So now you kind of have an idea of what our taste level is, because as Trish has learned, when I make recommendations, my taste level goes all over the place.
And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, I have questionable taste, I'll admit it. Look at the company I keep. Yeah. I meant Trish, not Matt and Samantha.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yep.
Okay, so if you were going to recommend a superhero series or movie based on a comic book, I'm giving you some stipulations here. Based on a comic book, what would you recommend and why? Let's start with Matt.
Oh wow. Based on a comic book, I guess. Man, this feels like such a generic answer, but I guess I will go with Hellboy. This qualifies, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Which Hellboy though?
Oh, okay. So I'm thinking about like the early Mike Mignola type books. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. So that was my introduction to Hellboy, and then I saw the first couple Guillermo del Toro movies, and then unfortunately I saw the last one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bummer.
We'll get you a care package together.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm starting a GoFundMe for my therapy on that one.
Yeah.
The character creation in Hellboy, the execution of what is physically on a page of a comic book and how it manifested on the screen, it felt like they reached in, ripped it out, and slapped it up on the screen.
And they captured so much of the pulpy heart of it, which is part of why I love Hellboy. Have you watched? I recently watched some animated Hellboy that was on. Oh shoot, one of my streaming services. I don't remember which one.
I think it's Netflix.
I honestly don't remember. I was just clicking through last time I was sick, and I watched a bunch of Hellboy animated, and those were really good too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was one set in Japan that I especially enjoyed.
The only thing I didn't care for in the first movie was, unfortunately, and I do love her, Salma Hayek.
I know who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
She has a name that sounds like that.
Was it Blair?
Selma Blair.
Yeah, Selma Blair.
Yeah. I agree with you. Sadly. Yeah, it was not my favorite.
It's hard for a human with all these monster-like characters to really stand out.
Yeah.
But she did have her badass moment. I will give her that. Trish, what about you? Superhero series or movie you'd recommend, and it's got to be based on a comic book.
So I don't really read a lot of comics. And it's hard that I'm thinking, what would I recommend? Because I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Watchmen movie, but I would recommend the Watchmen series. The problem is that isn't really, the situations and those characters are not really in the graphic novel. But it is based off of that world. So I can't recommend the movie in all good conscience because for reasons, it sucked. But the TV show was great, actually, with Regina King. I mean, that was some phenomenal storytelling. So I would highly recommend that, but only because it's rooted in the world that the Watchmen graphic novel set up.
And weirdly enough, the series is more true to the comic than the movie was.
Yeah, very well. And I will say the only part of the movie that I would say was true to the comic is their interpretation of Rorschach in the movie. Their Rorschach, I thought, was very close to what I remember the graphic novel being.
Yeah.
I thought he was disturbing in equal measure in both. So I think that was probably the only part of that movie that actually got the comic right.
Again, this is where questionable taste level. It's the only Zack Snyder film I like.
See, I forget it's Zack Snyder, which explains probably why I hate it.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, after 300, I had such high hopes for Watchmen, the movie, and it was such a disappointment. Like I felt like he just didn't get it. Kind of like I felt like he didn't get Superman. Like I fundamentally did not get the characters. So it was a big disappointment for me. But I will back you up on the TV show. We saw a couple of episodes. We haven't finished it yet, but I have loved what I've seen so far.
Oh, and just wait, it gets better. Like
Yeah.
the opening for me was the weakest part. It just got better.
Oh wow.
Oh, good.
And
That's still in
couldn't-
my to be watched, so I don't have an opinion about it yet.
I couldn't binge it because it was too much. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
there are just some shows that I'm like, no, this is too intense. This is too much. I got to process what I'm seeing. So I could not binge that show.
It's
But
the
it
Black
was-
Mirror effect. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's incredible. Yeah.
Samantha, what about you? Movie or series based on a comic book? What would you recommend?
The Tick. Yeah, and I would pick it in all of its iterations. Like, I love the comics, I love the old animated program, I love the old live action program, and I was really loving the new live action program. And I think the key in all of them is that the creator of the comic was involved heavily in all of these productions, and that's why every single time the Tick felt like the Tick. He didn't get reinvented. He didn't get Zack Snyderized or anything like that. He remained the Tick, and I love the Tick, who is both he's both an homage to like old superhero, like Adam West Batman kind of superhero, and he's very sincere and a kind of a parody and a sincerity at the same time, which is this really unusual line to be able to ride. And so every iteration I've seen of the Tick is right up my alley. If I was at my house instead of my mom's, I'd be wearing my shirt that says spoon.
What is
I have to tell you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Remy.
No, go ahead.
I have to tell you, Samantha, I didn't like the Tick until this latest iteration of it. And
I think
don't
they
know
had the
why.
best. It was Arthur. Arthur was the best
Yes.
in the most recent. But the Tick
Yeah.
himself has been excellent in everything. He's always been himself.
Exactly. And I think that is it, is I felt like Arthur made the world accessible to me, honestly. So, yeah. And I'm finally a Tick fan. My husband is so excited.
What was the character the American Maid? Was that?
Yeah, she's in the old. She was in the with Batmanuel in the old live action. I love Batmanuel too.
Batmanuel.
So I just remember the first time I turned it on, because it used to, but the 1992 X-Men was, I turned it on, and then there's this dude dressed like a Tick, and this woman just hurling her shoe. Now, as a kid, it's just this random woman hurling her shoe. Now, fast forward to adulthood and understanding the context of the shoe, which, if you've been in the Discord, there's an entire shoe throwing montage happening. It makes so much more sense on like a deep cultural level that I was like, that was genius. It touched me on multiple levels. And not in a way.
Do you need to show us on the doll or?
Yeah.
Throw a shoe at it.
Show us on the
I'm
shoe.
actually, the two that I would recommend that I can't.
Oh wait, if you get two, I want another one.
Well, 1992 X-Men animated series
Oh.
was, as far as I'm concerned, as at its time, it was the most true adaptation of a comic book. It did get sterilized because it was a Saturday morning cartoon. But I'm going to give all the props to it for breaking so many barriers that would eventually lead to so many more Fox properties, the MCU. It for me proved that comic books on screen could work. So I'm actually going to ditch my other one, X-Men, 1992. Okay, so I'm going to take it one step further now, because let's see if I can start taxing people's memory. What movie or series would you recommend that is either original or not based on a comic, and why? Recommendation, not based on a comic.
So
Or
one came to
original.
mind for me, but I'm not aware of the comic, but it's possible there is one. I don't know. How about Chronicle? Have you
Oh
guys seen Chronicle?
no.
Oh,
Oh wait, yes I have. Yeah, I was about to say
Yeah.
no, I haven't. I was like, oh yeah.
It's a pretty dark superhero story. You know, young people find mysterious stones that give them powers, but one of the guys who gets the powers is really broken, right?
Mhm.
And so you get to see powers given to somebody who's not necessarily going to choose to use them for good, and his friend, you know, has to try to save him. Is this sounding? Remy
yeah.
looks confused. So yeah,
No, Michael
But,
B. Jordan, doesn't it?
I don't remember. Because I think I saw it before I would have known who Michael B. Jordan was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Mhm.
back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I will say that movie is the best shaky cam movie ever made,
Yes.
because when all of a sudden he lets go of the broken character is recording everything, so it's all first person, bounces around, but they get telekinesis and he finally lets the camera go, and suddenly you see the camera floating out and it turns around, and for the rest of the movie you're watching the movie that he's recording by holding the camera with telekinesis.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Oh wow,
Wow.
Yeah.
this movie sounds
And-
way better in retrospect.
And I'm not aware of a comic book source for that one, but it's possible there is one and I'm just not aware of it.
I'm gonna say I know everything about all comics ever written. I think it's great.
Oh, what a dangerous thing to claim.
Oh my god.
Who's
All
gonna
right,
prove him wrong?
Trish, what do you got for us?
So I'm gonna go really quirky and say Mystery Men. And again, I'm not a big comic book reader, so if there's a comic book of Mystery Men, I'm not aware of it. But I really love that movie, and I didn't think I would. When it was actually Todd and Dan, my husband Dan and our best friend Todd, that showed that to me for the first time, and I was like, I'm gonna hate this. Like, this just doesn't look like my thing. And I love that movie. It is so weird, and it is just. It's one of the few Ben Stiller films that I will watch again and again and again. I absolutely love it. I love the cast. I love the weird ass costumes and powers. I love Hank Azaria as the Blue Raja. He doesn't have any blue on his costume. He just throws forks at everybody. I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant.
Man, I gotta get into this throwing business. That sounds like that's what makes things a hit. You throw a
I'll have
shoe,
to
you
watch-
throw a fork.
I'll have to watch that one again. It's been a long time, but I really do love comedy superhero when it's done well.
Yeah, this is done really well. Like, there's the character who's only invisible when no one's looking at him. And it's just brilliant. He's like, nobody look at me, nobody look at me. And he's the only one that can get past the death lasers at the big bad's house. And nobody has believed that he can really do this, but they keep him on the team. And then this is the moment where they're like, oh, he really can turn invisible. But the thing is, when he turns invisible, he also loses his clothes. So he's standing there, buck naked.
Which, I'm sorry, that answered a really important question, because the Invisible Woman in the first Fantastic Four, she has to get naked to use her powers, and later it gets explained that she can expand them, whatever. Yeah. But how are her clothes also just poof invisible if she can only turn herself invisible? So they answered an important question as far as I'm concerned.
They really
Yeah.
did. They really did.
Yeah, the answer is science, and that's it. That is it.
Magic.
Yes, our favorite
Magic.
science in comic books, hand wavium.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
All
James
right,
Cameron
Matt,
just
what do you
stole
got
that.
for us?
Hand Wavium is going to be in Avatar 3, 4, and 5. All right, I'm going to go with, and I think this is not based on the comic, The Incredibles.
Oh,
Does that count?
That's a good one.
yeah.
That does.
Okay.
I'm surprised it took this long to get there.
I,
That was my second one. If somebody had picked Mystery Men, I was going to do The Incredibles.
yeah, I think The Incredibles. Speaking of Fantastic Four, is Fantastic Four done right? Like that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what every Fantastic Four movie should have been, and never was. So,
Agreed.
yeah,
And
yeah, I absolutely love The Incredibles, and first and second one, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It was the perfect blend of sincerity, wholesomeness, family, a little danger, not too much. And it brought something to the table. And I mean, really, everyone knows the no capes.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about that one on the romance panel. I think that was yesterday, about how you get to see a married couple staying a married couple and working through things. And how often do we get to see that in any kind of fiction, let alone superhero fiction?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go so far off the rails. So anyone who knows me knows that I watch weird, obscure things. Like, it gets weird. And I have some for the upcoming that people are going to be like, what the fuck? Which is funny because my students are watching. Sorry, guys. On Netflix, Unknown Origins. It is a Spanish film, subtitles, and the premise to it is it's so unlike anything that I've seen for a superhero film. It's about a police detective that needs help to solve some murders that are happening, and they have weird like comic book references and they can't figure it out. So they go to the police chief's son, who is a comic book store owner. He is the geek that we all wanted to be. And come to find out, what you've actually been watching this whole movie is a superhero origin story that has twists and turns that never ever add up to anything that you would have expected in mainstream. And I was riveted. It gets a little hokey towards the end, but I didn't care. If they don't make more.
So was
of
this
them,
one a movie or a series?
Movie. It's just one on Netflix. I'm going to put it in like my top tier superhero movies, and there's very little supering about it. So, but it is a classic like Spider-Man origin story type story, which I hate origin stories. So the fact I love it, just awesome.
It's got to be really good then, like really super original for you to say that.
Yeah, it's the reason I hated Captain America, the reason I hated the first X-Men, the reason I hate the first of every Marvel movie is because, oh my God, just make them a hero. We've all seen it. Don't care. The Spider-Man, what was the first one?
Homecoming.
Poof, no origin story. That's why it's the best.
Yep.
I loved it. All right, so if you're watching, you now have a long list of things to add to your watch list. That's what we're here for. So what I'm curious about is, what themes are we seeing that are happening in these non-Marvel, non-DC, and to some extent the others like Image, IDW, all those. What are other themes that we are seeing that pop up in these shows? Use any references you want, whatever show you want, whatever movie. But what types of characters and what type of themes are we seeing that the others aren't touching upon? Thinker, huh?
That is a thinker.
I think some of the less mainstream, I'm not in one of the big camp ones, are willing to go dark in a different way. Not Zack Snyder dark, which is just everybody must be depressed at their core, but like, but people who don't have real clear boundaries and are presenting as heroes and aren't. I'm thinking of things like The Boys, right? Where, our so-called heroes are terrible people, like all of them across the board. Like not one of them you would want to leave in a room alone with one of your children. They're not good people. And another one was Invincible. I read and watched that one, and in both iterations that goes into like kind of what if scenarios of Superman. Like if Superman ever went really rogue, what would that be like? And so that's definitely something I see more once you get outside of DC and the MCU, is a willingness to explore a different kind of darkness. Not this put on grim dark kind of gritty veneer, but really dark darkness.
Not literal darkness like Zack Snyder. Like,
Yeah, not like
Yeah,
you
I was
have
gonna
to
say.
turn up the brightness on your TV so you can tell the characters apart. Yeah.
Matt, what about you? Any characters or themes we're seeing in these others?
I'm sort of along the same lines as Samantha. I feel like there's more freedom, I think, in those movies to sort of delve into some of these more adult themes and to show more of a range. So not just black, white, but there, all the shades in between for these characters. And they're not purely good or purely evil. And I haven't seen The Boys, but I've heard that a lot about that.
Purely evil, basically.
Yeah, that show. But they're still great characters. And then, there's, shows like Umbrella Academy.
Oh, yeah.
Which, is about to have, one of the first transgender actors I can think of in a movie or a show. And there was a gay character on the show in the first season. So they are totally not afraid to have that kind of representation on screen. And I think it's great.
And that was one, I think they learned their first season had some rocky issues with how they treated 2/3 of their cast.
Yeah.
But I felt like someone looked at it and was like, not bad, we can do better. And then season 2 happened, and man, the first 5 minutes of season 2, I was like, I don't care what you do, I'm here for this.
Yeah, the kiddo and I rewatched season 1 before we got into season 2 because we've watched too many things in between and we couldn't remember that well. And if you watch them right after each other, you can really see the growth curve. And I liked season
really
1.
different.
I did like season 1, but season 2 is miles above.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just, damn, all across the board for that one. But yeah, I fully understand why people see The Boys and go, ugh, I'm done with that. I do like the fact that sometimes to their detriment, someone in the writing studio was like, can we go there? And someone was like, ha, 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 and they go there. Sometimes I think they do it because it's almost want to see if we can get canceled for this. So I almost think for that one, it's a case of maybe a studio exec should step in every once in a while. Just pop your head in the room to see what's going on.
I feel like there's this very delicate line that you have to tread with these darker elements. And I haven't watched The Boys. I've seen plenty of clips. I've read a lot of articles. I've talked to a lot of people that have watched it. And the thing that strikes me about that show, though, is I feel like they're doing it purely for the shock value. I don't feel like they're doing it in a way that they're saying, okay, we're going to, this is an element of the story that's important and it's going to contribute to the arc of these characters. I feel like it's just there because, hey, well, we did this really dark thing in this episode. Now we got to ratchet it up a notch. Let's have a baby with laser eyes. You know what I mean? Why?
The baby with laser eyes was the light part of the episode.
I've watched the first season and I haven't been back for the second season yet because it did seem like it just kept saying, okay, that was awful. Let's see if we can make it worse. That was worse. Let's see how much worse we can make it. And I only have so much tolerance to go that dark. I'm more of a noble bright than a grim dark lady myself. But
and it's funny because just like Umbrella Academy, I thought they improved on their second season. The Boys, I think that shock factor was there for the shock factor. In season 2, someone was like, hey guys, your shock factor needs to be plot relevant. Just think about that. And at least in season 2, when the big reveal happens that we all knew was going to happen, it made sense. It was still shocking, but you spent a whole season coming up to it. So I do feel that on these smaller projects, when people's hands are out of them, sometimes creativity can run amok. And I think that was an example.
There have to be boundaries. I mean, and that's one of the best examples I could think of is the ruination of something that was great because there was an absence of boundaries is the Matrix trilogy. Now,
Oh,
that
God,
first
yes.
movie, the first movie, the Wachowski sisters had clear boundaries. They had a very small budget for what they actually wanted to accomplish because the studio was like, this isn't going to work. This is going to flop. And then suddenly the studio had this massive hit on their hands and they removed all the boundaries. And what we got were these two bloated films that there are elements of it that you can point to and say, well, it's actually kind of beautiful, or well, it's kind of striking, or this element on its own would have been a great movie. But they stuffed everything in there because the studio just didn't care. They wanted them to just make a bunch of money for them. So you have to have boundaries, I feel like. And that's not me saying that, like, I support somebody from a studio coming in and justifying their job by saying, this character's tie should be green, not blue. I'm out of here. I'm going to go cash my check. I'm
But
not saying that. Yeah.
Someone has to just come in and go, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah, or why is this here?
There's something to be said in creative process, I think, for having to defend why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes.
To an editor, to a CP, critique partner, or whatever.
Yes.
Just if nobody's asking why you're doing what you're doing, then you're throwing everything out there, and some of it should have been worked on a little more. Because you're doing it just to do it instead of because it serves the character or the story or something.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I missing? I haven't asked somebody. I lost count.
Me.
Trish,
but
go for it.
I was chiming in on everybody else's. I think I want to circle back to something that Matt said. You touched on representation, and I feel like that is something that these non-DC and Marvel properties are much more willing to embrace. So for the Umbrella Academy, Elliot Page came out right after wrapping on season 2, and at the time that he wrapped on that, he was going by female pronouns. And what they ended up doing is saying, okay, we'll make your character trans. Like, they rolled with it. And I feel like Disney isn't going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we now have an out canonically bi gender fluid Loki in the MCU, which is fantastic, but how long did it take us to get there?
Yeah.
And how many micro baby steps did we have to take? You know what I mean?
And will it be anything more than a checkbox?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's like an event when something like this happens in Marvel or DC. Like it's this huge thing that we're supposed to celebrate them for, and it is great. But it's like, this is just stuff that happens all the time. In some of these other properties that aren't bound by these constraints.
Exactly. And I want to see, look, I was watching the 3rd episode, no spoilers, I'm not going to talk about the show, but I was watching it last night with my husband, and I'm like, okay, he said he's been with men and women. I want to see him with a guy in this show. I don't want to see him hook up with a chick. If they're going to put him with somebody, let's put him with a dude. Like, I want to see that. That means
you have to justify a checkbox. And that's where my big issue with anything, and I'm going to go, actually, I think I can comfortably say Marvel and DC. I'm going to take CW shows out of it because I do think they stretch a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like Matt said, oh, look, we have a black-led main character. Banner Day. Well, that shouldn't be a banner day. That should have happened. Oh, look. Yeah. Female-led film. Why? That shouldn't be a big deal. And they treat
and so far each of these don't have follow-up behind them. Like, you get the black-led film. Okay, that was it. See you next decade.
And and I look back to, like, they started hot. I mean, Blade 1, 2, 3, like, out of the gate, like, blockbuster. They followed it up. They did everything, and you were like, oh, this is going to go somewhere.
Nope.
20 years later, it took us to get there. So that I agree with Trish 100%. And I'm actually going to say, like, another one to recommend is something like The Walking Dead. Invincible is all the rage right now because it's superheroes, but The Walking Dead is also based on Kirkman's novel, graphic novel. And that show, one, is the only reason the AMC exists. But you had a Asian character take the lead, and it wasn't oh look, there's an Asian character. He's got 3 episodes to go. And when a lesbian couple showed up, you were like, they're lesbian. There was no fanfare about it. It was just, that's the way the world is. And I really appreciate these smaller properties just being like, hey, these people exist. Just put them there.
Yeah.
Like, you normalize it by not tooting a horn every time you put them in there. You normalize it by just having it be.
Yeah.
And that's how they need to start looking at it in these larger superhero properties.
Yeah. I mean, they're representative of society. You shouldn't treat them like, like you're saying, like a checkbox, like, oh, look, we did this, give us some props. No, they're part of society. They should be in these movies.
And especially, and I'm going to take a dig at DC on this one. Superman, we didn't even get the Batman. That Flash catastrophe, like, what the hell's going on with that? And then you have Wonder Woman. The only reason anyone even cared about Batman versus Superman. The only saving grace of that whole movie. Then she comes out with her own movie. Bam! Makes all the money. What? Are you going to get a sequel? Okay, yeah, we'll give a sequel because it proved itself in the box office. Like, I know, but we'll get another Batman movie, and it's going to suck. So,
well, I wasn't that happy with the second Wonder Woman either. Not even at all where I would have gone for that story on like almost any front.
I will say it ticked some fan boxes for me though. Like the second she turned that jet invisible, I was having fangirl convulsions. My husband was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "You don't understand. Like, we get an invisible jet." Like, as a little girl, I used to run around pretending I was flying the invisible jet. Like, seriously, that was a deal for me.
See, now my sister had the underoos because we're both old enough that they were only printed on the front, right? So your back was still all white.
Yeah. I had the mixed set.
I had the Supergirl.
I had like the ones that had just Wonder Woman in the front, and then it was like all coverage, right? And I was like so proud. And then my mom got me the tank underoos set, and I was like, I should have washed that more. I full disclosure, like I didn't want to take it off. I was so excited. Anyway, sorry.
Right. So this is the one where I think this is the big disparity between having a Marvel Disney backing versus all of these indies. They have to climb up a really steep hill. Budget. Because in a power-centric world, it matters. How have some of the smaller properties gotten around this need for glitz and glam and over-the-top special effects? Anyone have one?
I mean, for me, the answer is clear. It's character and story. I mean, you concentrate on those instead of these, huge tentpole-like moments that you see in a lot of Marvel and DC movies. These stories are much more focused on building the character arcs and building these incredible stories.
Well, and the sets, just like Chronicle that I mentioned earlier, a goodly portion of that movie takes place in like living rooms, right? And backyards. So they didn't need to build anything huge and fabulous. They didn't have to make an ice palace, hidden someplace in the Arctic for Superman or whatever. They were just kids in their houses. They probably could just use someone's house. Right. So that's, that's definitely using a smaller, more domestic setting is a good workaround.
And I think that they make the stories smaller, which is kind of funny to say in a superhero movie. That Remy, you and I have talked a lot about Fast Color, and that movie, for all that it has global stakes, is a very small story. It's an intimate story. You feel like, even though this isn't the way they filmed it, you do feel like you're in close up that whole movie on these women's lives. And it's also very smart, where it doesn't do a ton of explaining of the world either. It like takes you on this journey with these people, but the story is intimate. The story isn't necessarily about the global stakes. It's about these mother-daughter relationships and how they're going to overcome their internal demons. The main character in particular, how does she get over her guilt? How does she embrace who she is? What does that look like? And it's very compelling, but it's still a superhero movie, even though there's not any of the flashy explosions.
And I think throughout that whole movie, there's maybe 5 instances of power.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a couple big moments of the power being shown, but when you see the power, it's just color. There's nothing more to it than that. And it probably is an After Effects filter. Like, those moments were really budgeted to be effective. And when they use the power in a small condensed area, then it gets a little probably more camera trickery to it. But man,
there are probably some practical effects setups, but the bigger budgets are in the computer generated effects, not in the practicals these days.
The one that stands out for me as, this is going to be weird because it's probably one of the most expensive shows ever made. The Wachowski sisters did Sense8, which I've been waiting for 41 minutes to talk about it.
Well done for holding off. I'm proud of you.
I know, I worked at it. So Sense8, it follows 8 people who are telepathically linked, and it's a little bit more intense than that, but the effects for it aren't super powered in any way, shape, or form. It'll be one character walks, and then all of a sudden the camera goes and it follows another character. So it's almost cinematography that creates all the elements. There's no, I'm hard pressed to find, I'm sure there is because CGI is in everything, but I'm really hard pressed to find where their powers relied on CGI and not a camera technique. And for me, it has been the best visual representation of telepathy I have ever seen. No Patrick Stewart touching his forehead and making a wah 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 sound. It was fantastic.
It was
and
beautiful.
That part was cheap. It
was a beautiful story, and again, it's character driven. It's not about the powers. It's about these people.
And for me, you could have taken the power out for the most part, and the character would have been, truthfully, the best part of the whole thing. Any other workarounds to special effects budgets in?
I have a shameless kind of example of it. So I was an actress before I was an author, and one of the last things I did with my production company that I used to have with my husband and our best friend, we created a superhero web series. And we had no budget, like literally no budget. And so what we did is we put it in an office setting. So it was The Office meets Super Friends. And you never see them go out on missions. You see the office politics, you see them come back from missions, you see all of those things, but you never see the mission. And the whole idea was, what do superheroes do when they're not superheroing? What do they do in an office? What's it really like in the Hall of Justice when no one's looking?
Lots of paperwork.
Invisible.
Yeah. And that's what we did. We just did like, I think we did 12 episodes of that. We only were able to do one season, but it was a lot of fun, and it was just something different. It was never supposed to be superpowers shown or anything like that. So that's another thing that you can do, is just you take the superhero element and you put it in something that is really juxtaposed to it, like the complete opposite of what the genre is really known for, and just kind of see what happens.
Has anyone by chance watched Raising Dion?
No.
Haven't yet.
I haven't yet. No.
Everyone has to go watch this. So it's a superhero show. It's a Netflix original, so of their own design. And it's about a 6-year-old boy who suddenly starts to get superpowers. So obviously we could have gone through training montages. He could have eventually grown up to be a superhero, but that would have cost money. Let's make the story about the mother dealing with a son who's so young he doesn't understand. He calls it magic all the time because he thinks that he's doing magic tricks. And they walked into this project going, guys, money, it's a concern. We need some decent actors, so that's half our budget. So what do you got now? And they crafted a story to reduce the budget. And there is like a big fight scene at the end. It's not really a fight scene, but they worked the budget in such a way that the special effects, like, they were secondary to, he just blinks in and out when he teleports. It didn't need to be flashier than that.
Mm-hmm.
From the perspective of a 6-year-old kid, it's the coolest thing ever. So I think for me, when you get a smaller budget and knowing you can't have a Thor level lightning effect, how are you going to get creative with it? I think there's better storytelling in those creative solutions.
Uh-huh.
And this isn't superhero related, but when you talk about something like that, I think of Jaws.
Yes.
Because Jaws couldn't do a bunch of this, crazy underwater with this shark type of, they could only use that mechanical shark for like a few shots in the movie, and even then it didn't work all that well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't have that to fall back on, you really find yourself concentrating more on crafting the story and crafting these incredible characters, like Quint, that just stick with you and last, after the movie's over.
Because what you remember about that movie isn't the shark.
Mm.
It's the characters. It's
Mm-hmm.
Roy Scheider, and it's blanking on everybody else's name, but it's those characters that you're just like, that's what I remember. I remember the scene in the boat where they're drunk and he's talking about his experience.
Oh, that's the best scene in the movie.
The best, yeah. And it sets up much more than seeing people get pulled under and eaten. The terror of this shark, I think.
Yeah, they built it up without having to show the shark all the time.
Exactly.
And
I love that. Yeah.
The scariest part is the not knowing. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like someone, like, jump scares are cheap, but making me terrified by the thing you haven't shown me, you get props.
Yeah.
It's the key in a lot of horror, I think, is knowing how much to show and when to show it.
Yeah.
Samantha just segued to the next question. Okay.
Oh dear, what are we asking me to show?
So, Marvel and DC got a lot of flack at the beginning because, oh, look, another superhero action film. Oh, another superhero action film. A superhero espionage film. Oh, a buddy drama, a heist movie, intergalactic comedy. Like, they finally learned that we got tired, and so they started mixing it up. So what about genre? When we're talking about these properties that aren't Marvel or DC, what are we seeing that are hardcore genre superhero pieces? We've talked about some, but I'm curious, what are the genres we're seeing, and do you have examples?
Well, one of my favorite superhero genres that we haven't talked about much yet is pulp, like old-time pulp. And so, like, most of the movies I can think of are a little older, like The Rocketeer, Flash Gordon, The Phantom, those kinds of films. But that's definitely a favorite for me that I'd love to see more of. And I love the way that lets us play in a different time period. I was complaining about Wonder Woman earlier, the second Wonder Woman. One reason the first Wonder Woman worked is because we made a historical picture, right? We put her in World War II, which is old history for current viewers, right? None of us are old enough to have served. So it's definitely history for us. And then when we moved it to 84, okay, that's within the lifetime of a lot of the people watching. And we didn't make nearly as good a use of the setting. It didn't matter that it was 1984, except for, we did a stupid clothing montage so that we could echo the really good clothing montage from the first movie. So I think that's one of the things I love in pulp is that it's using superhero kind of the same way you can use steampunk as like it's a setting. More than it is a genre, and then you can make a superhero story in any genre, and these historical fiction ones are a lot of fun.
Trish, Matt, what do you got for us?
Oh man,
I don't
I'm trying to
know.
think through some genres like sci-fi, like
Well,
we've already talked about The
Krypton.
Matrix.
Yeah, Krypton would be sci-fi, I think, but that's a DC property, so
Yeah,
It gets a little bit harder, doesn't it?
it does.
hard.
But I mean, if you go back to something like The Incredibles, I mean, that's really just a family, like a family drama type movie at its core.
The one that keeps standing out to me is, and it was everything I wanted to be. It's not a good movie, questionable. Brightburn.
Oh yeah.
I have always been fascinated with the injustice concept of what if Superman had been pushed over the edge and just went batshit crazy, and I mean, who would stop him? And in the comic book, I never felt like it doesn't get as dark as I think it should have for what was the possibility. And Brightburn was just like, here we go. We're going to copyright infringe all over the place and show you the reality of what would happen if Superman wasn't a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was disturbingly gross.
Yeah. Well, even more so because in true horror fashion, they used a child as an antagonist. And to me, I'm going to be honest with you, like there's nothing more disturbing in a horror setting than a kid who's the evil thing. And again, this is it's a juxtaposition. It's a thing that's supposed to be like the most innocent is actually the thing that's going to come like eat you alive. Like that is really disturbing.
Yeah, evil children are definitely my favorite in horror movies. Exactly for that. And my favorite is when they're like unnaturally still. And that's when you know. That's when you know. It's like that kid is 8 and he hasn't moved in 30 seconds. Something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Trisha's going to go around. Every time Trisha's kid stands still, she's going to be like, demon, I expel you. Yeah, I really like the idea. So I think that there's always this concept of superheroes being virtuous. And I mean, let's be honest, if I had superpowers, I would be a villain and I'd be kind of a lazy one, but I would try to be a good bad villain.
Be interesting.
It would be like,
Miranda. I just saw that.
Miranda.
And she's right. I had it on my list to talk about, but I didn't think about it as a psychological thriller. It is.
What movie are we talking about? Sorry.
Unbreakable.
I forgot. You guys can't see the chat. Yeah, it's Unbreakable.
Oh yeah.
Both of the movies in that.
I couldn't think of what genre to put that under unless you're talking about like deconstructing superheroes. I mean, it's I could not place it.
But it is a psychological thriller in a lot of ways.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I felt they snuck I almost felt annoyed because I really liked the movie. I hate origin stories, and at the end you're like, "Fuck, you got me." Like I felt duped, and it was well deserved. And I mean, the last scene of that one for me. Just
Holy shit, man. Yeah.
everything I
Well,
wanted
and
it to be.
it's an example of probably one of my favorite screen villains of all time, because I loved Mr. Glass in that even more than I loved the hero. And he's horrible, but I thought he was fascinating.
Yep.
Like the way the understanding of that, when he talks about villains and how they are the opposite of the hero. You know, Lex Luthor isn't physically strong, he's mentally strong versus Superman's physical strength. And M. Night did that with these two characters brilliantly. I really loved it.
And I'm actually going to say, as far as the franchise goes, that was another Matrix situation for me. First one, I was along for the ride. Split has got to be one of the most well-acted movies. Like, James McAvoy, like, you redeemed yourself after being in X-Men. Like, wow.
Hey, don't harsh on McAvoy. Don't harsh on my McAvoy.
X-Men Apocalypse.
He was the only watchable thing. He was the only watchable thing in that shit stain of a movie.
That is true.
But then
some movies are better if you watch them in a language you don't speak.
Oh, yes. I could see that.
I think it would be better to watch it in reverse.
Ooh.
See it get undone.
I mean, it's not going to be worse.
Yeah.
It might make more sense.
Yeah. Narratively, you're probably doing better.
But yeah, I feel Glass is where it kind of lost me. And again, M. Night Shyamalan sometimes gets a little heady, and
yeah,
it got, like, the first story was pared down so well. And it's the same reason I liked Fast Color. Fast Color is a simple story. I think the entire synopsis for that movie could be summed up in one paragraph. Same for Unbreakable, but then Glass needed 3 or 4 pages. Like, it's too much. Pull it back. All right, so we're coming to the end of the hour, and it's the last panel, so I suppose I should let people leave. Like, call it a con and let it all go.
We can't do that until our after hours event. It's our last after hours.
I'm gonna sleep through the after hours event. So I'm
drinking through the after hours event.
The after hour event tonight, we're having a concert, and for those that don't know, I originally went and looked up all the videos that, like, dealt with superheroes, and there's so much, like, screamo heavy metal. I was like, no, I can't do this. So I went and found all the songs made popular that were in superhero films. And
that's probably got a greater variety.
Yeah. And some of them only stand because of the movie. Chad Kroger, I'm looking at you. Love the song, but so tell me who you are, tell me where I can find you, and let's wrap this bad boy up. Trish, go for it.
I'm Trish Heinrich. Again, I write superhero urban fantasy under TL Heinrich. You can find it at superherofiction.com. You can find the pre-order link for my first superhero romance novel under my website, which you can see right here. And I also co-host the Geekorama podcast with Jeremy. And you can find all of that on superherofiction.com. Thank you for being at our convention.
Samantha, how about you?
Hello again. I'm Samantha Bryant. I'm best known for the Menopausal Superheroes series, which is 3 novels, 2 novellas, a set of short stories, and then 1 book that puts all that short stuff together for you. The first book is called Going Through the Change, and you can find my website at samanthabryant.com. And there's probably something else I was supposed to say, but that's all I can think of.
Work with it. Matt, how about you?
Yeah. All right. So hello again. I'm Matt King, and all of my books are on kingwrites.com. They're up on Amazon. You can get paperback or Kindle, whatever you like. And every time there's a superhero movie, you can probably find me on the Hodgepodge podcast. complaining about some stuff. So, yeah.
That's my favorite activity too.
Yeah.
I love them, and I love to tear them apart.
Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Jeremy Flagg. You can find all my stuff at remyflag.com. That's really all I got for you. Swing by superhero-fiction.com. You can check out all the previous recorded panels, and there is a book sale going on right now for 99 cents. And that is the easiest way to find your next superhero read. So that is the end, and thank you for being a panelist with me again.
Oh, thank you so much.
For sure. Thanks for inviting me.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.